Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Church Mouse Chronicles. Today, in our studio, which is all across the globe, we have Bridget, and she's a professional Among Us player, and also wrong word file. We have Austin from Gospel Simplicity, which is a YouTube channel that tackles the complexities of the gospel in a very profound, confusing language of high theology. Thank you for joining us, Austin.
It's my pleasure.
We'll fix that. Also in our studio, we have our permanent host, M. Hi, M.
Hey, guys. What's up?
Say hi, M. Okay. That checks out. So I was initially contacted by Austin to do an interview on his channel, Gospel Simplicity. And now we are returning the favor. So thank you for joining us, because honestly, I believe your Christianity's next big thing on YouTube, which until TikTok came along was a place rather devoid of Christianity, but thank God it was also a great pusher of the Lord's work in the world as, well, technology. Classic theology, it has its good sides, it's got its bad sides. Austin, I would like to ask you first, as a YouTuber to YouTuber, what made you start your channel?
Yeah, so, and thanks for the introduction and the kind words about the channel. The channel started, it's been almost 2 years now, and it really grew out of this conversation I was having with a mentor of mine who's a pastor and just someone I had looked up to and was really investing in me. And I was talking to him about the fact that I just really loved communicating, and I had gotten the chance to speak a little bit with some of the high schoolers at our church in that ministry, but I wasn't sure what to do next. And his advice, he was like, just keep fighting for at-bats is how he put it. And meaning just keep trying to get speaking opportunities. And then I realized, well, I had a camera and I knew something about video editing. So I thought, I don't have to wait for people to invite me to speak. I can just speak in my basement or in my bedroom. And so that's how it started. It really was originally out of wanting to just get better as a communicator. And then this is also just stuff I'm really passionate about. And I didn't want to continue putting my girlfriend or my family to sleep by talking about this stuff. So I thought I'd do it to the internet. And
But hold on. Was it the bedroom or the basement in the end?
Well, it would go back and forth. So when I'm at school, it's in my dorm room here. But when I was first at home, I usually did it in the basement. Occasionally, I would actually do them on our back deck, and you'd hear the crickets in the background. But that was a little distracting.
So you were in college?
So it was right before college that I started. I was working at a church at the time, kind of between high school and college. And then it wasn't until a little before college that I started doing it consistently. And then it's been in college that it's really taken off, if you will.
Oh, nice.
May we inquire? Sorry, B, for interrupting. I know you have a ton of questions, but I'll leave the theological questions to you. I'll just ask the normal questions. So may we inquire as to what's your field of study?
Yeah, so I am a theology major.
Well, no surprise there.
It's fitting.
That makes one of us. It's interesting because constantly people have these assumptions about me that I'm a theology major, that I'm a priest, and all of the things I draw myself as, but I'm not really. So it's actually.
Wait. Aren't you a deacon?
Well, everybody can be a bishop on YouTube, so.
Now, don't you technically have some? What are you, a reader? I still don't know what that is, but it sounds.
Yeah. Well, it's a lower clerical rank that reads the portions of the Bible during the services in the Orthodox Church. It's never the gospel. It's most usually it is apostolic epistles. Okay. And from time to time, it is a Psalter and Old Testament readings. But the gospel is read by the deacon or the priest or in the absence of the
Thank
two.
Thank God, because we would have to actually listen to be here reading stuff. But so this reminds me of a joke that I've never heard. A theologian, a reader, and a lay person walk into a Skype bar. What are they going to be talking about?
Who knows?
Well, I can tell you one thing. For 45 minutes, they'll try to set up the recording equipment, and it will start falling apart on every step they make. So, but you don't really need a theology major, a layman, and a reader to do that, because you need three of anything, and it will fall apart. So.
Yeah. But doesn't the scripture say something down the lines of when more people than one in one place? Doesn't have to be a physical place. It could just be a made-up place that we just, made up.
Well, it's nice that even with even our Lord present with us, and He's the fourth among us, also can figure this out, and He can't make it better. So it's sort of reassuring that it is something that even God can't fix. So, so Austin, sort of related to that, because you've had quite a lot of uploads on your channel, and I tried to watch a portion of it because there was ever so much time that I could devote to it. Are there any funny moments that you can recall from your YouTube experience, like mishaps, misunderstandings, silly situations, whatever have you?
That's a great question. I'm sure I could make a bloopers reel of.
That's a good idea. That's a good video idea.
In the videos themselves, but when I first started making videos, I would script them. I don't script them anymore.
Yeah.
But I would start going, and then I'd just make the strangest I would always react to myself when I messed up. So I'd be going, and I'd be like, Austin, what are you doing? Get your head. Keep going.
Ooh, that's
actually
that's
have
good
made
material.
it into the video. Although one of my most popular videos that I have, which was the first time I went to a Catholic Bible study, I watched it through the other day and realized that I forgot to take a cut out of the video. So I was talking and then I misspoke. And so, for instance, I was saying, I don't remember exactly what it was, but in John chapter 4, but you could tell I was supposed to cut the video, and it was halfway through a sentence. I was like, 50,000 people have watched this. I didn't think anyone would watch this. That's what I get.
Well, yeah, but it's still a great thing that even despite those errors, you still, it is a good video, and it's just the little things, I get mistakes all of the time, and sometimes those are factual, sometimes it is a little thing, and sometimes I'm watching a video after a year or two, and I notice something a little that I forgot to edit, a little smudge on the drawing, and I want to kill it and re-upload it. And for example, when I uploaded, I have a video on the calendars in the Orthodox Church, and the split second I posted it, I got, no, you made this mistake, and I'm okay, I'm keeping this for the comedy, not for the factual information, so we all have those.
Yeah, but fortunately, I think you kind of hacked the system over there, because B here has a second channel where he doesn't really care about any mishaps or errors, where he constantly makes many errors.
Yeah.
And then also, obviously, the best of his work, this podcast, or whatever it is, it's supposed to be entertainment. I'm not even sure if it qualifies, but it's supposed to be entertainment. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of let you know that our huge channel over here is so gonna propel you to stardom and Christianity right now.
Boyan promised to that, so.
But only if you play a game of Among Us with us.
So you guys might just end the call right now when I say these words. So brace yourselves. You're both sitting down.
Hold on.
I've never played Among Us.
Should record. I don't want to throw this. You had something to throw. That's not fair. That's not fair. It's not fair.
It's true.
I'll throw it a little bit. Look, it's not a Christian game.
It's a game.
I've heard of it, and a lot of guys on my floor play it. I've been meaning to get around to it. Actually, the first time I heard of it was, Boyan, you posted on your YouTube channel that you were playing Among Us with your subscribers or something. It's like, what's Among Us? I feel like I might have heard of this before. And then I was asking someone, and they're like, you don't know what Among Us is? Like, what rap?
And you're a YouTuber. You're a YouTuber, and YouTube propelled, well, the
Twitch.
big YouTubers,
Twitch and YouTube.
Twitch and YouTube, the gaming YouTubers, have propelled this game. Like, it has been around, I think, since like 2018 or something. But it's now the 2020 when we're actually seeing like the thing completely explode, and you can't find a decent server to play on. But that's besides the point. Look, you should consider it. You should consider
feel like
it.
I need to be cultured in this way, because
Well, you're gonna be hearing people saying things like "sus" and he vented and he needed more space, and you won't understand what it's referring to, and the memes will help, but won't help you 100%. I think you should experience it.
I think I should too. My poor girlfriend tried to explain it to me over text the other day, and I had no idea what she was talking about.
Among Us is something that you don't talk about. It's something that you do.
Oh, that's deep.
Oh my God, that's so profound. I regret the fact that we don't have real-time effects so that I can play some sort of music behind, or just an explosion. Exactly, like mind-blowing. Like Davey 504, if you know his YouTube channel, he's constantly has this like mind-blowing, and he does like a zoom or something, his face, or just his lips, like epical. Something like that.
We can edit in post-production with whatever we end up with. With whatever we end up with over this Skype mashup.
Funny how you say "we" and you never ever. But please go ahead.
I provide star power. Austin wouldn't be here if it wasn't for me. I made all of this.
Please, you YouTubers, shine your light upon me. I'm ready. Oh, you glow. You're glowing, Austin. What's wrong?
I'm glowing.
Oh no, that's the part of the. Okay, just go ahead.
Okay. By the way, Austin, because your channel is interviewing different Christians and everything, Catholic, Orthodox, and Christians. I want to know what is your personal input on like different flares? What are
Let's start Catholic. Let's start Catholic. Let's start Catholic.
No. Wait. Are you saying we should start Catholic because they're most interesting?
No, I didn't say that.
No, but I'm curious, why are you insisting on Catholics?
I didn't want to complete the sentence for a reason, and I do not intend to disclose that reason. I'm just suggesting we start with the Catholics.
Okay, fine. Start with the Catholics, Austin, because the kid wants to start with the Catholics, and he's going to get his Catholics.
Well, alphabetical, right? C comes...
Oh, that's a thing now. Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Well, maybe Anglicans would be alphabetically before Catholics.
That's true.
Just saying.
Fun fact, I've been to Anglican churches for the past 2 weeks.
Okay, let's start with Anglicans. I accept the order of things.
So what, am I talking about Anglicans or Catholics?
Your choice, but
My choice.
Start with if I was you, I'd start with the Anglicans.
Anglicans, they start with A. Yeah. The Anglicans, they're an interesting bunch, and they're very diverse because you have all the way from like Anglo-Catholics, which if you went to one of their services, it would look just like a Catholic service, to like low church Anglicans. For instance, the Anglican church I went to last week was meeting in a park outside, mainly because of COVID. They usually are inside.
Oh, yeah.
But it was a much lower church service. Yeah, Anglicanism is interesting to me in that there's that value of tradition and some of those more high church liturgical elements while still Protestant. And most of the professors that have been most impactful in my life have been Anglican. They're probably some of the reason I'm interested in all of this in general.
Mm-hmm.
Got me interested in more ecumenical
Yeah.
conversations. But yeah, I think Anglicanism's interesting. I don't know a ton about it. But as far as Catholicism, that's been kind of a recent area of interest and exploration. I didn't grow up knowing any passionate Catholics. The only Catholics I knew went to Mass on Christmas and Easter, and the kids suffered through confirmation classes just so that their relatives would give them money and presents when they finished. Yeah, that was about it. They fit well in like the Pew surveys of the 70% of Catholics that don't believe in transubstantiation and all that. That would be those Catholics that I knew. But then when I was working for a church, I was exposed to some like really passionate Catholics, and I made a video about this. And the way that happened was my uncle, who had never been religious at all, who I was always close with and had always wanted to see faith be a part of his life and for him to like have a relationship with God, and just hadn't seen that happen. And one day I get a call from him saying, "Do you want to go to a Bible study?" And I was like, "Absolutely, I want to go to a Bible study." Then he tells me it was at 5:30 in the morning at a Catholic church. I thought I should really listen longer before I say yes to things. But we did that, and it was a really neat experience getting to see like 60 guys showing up every Wednesday morning for Bible study at 5:30 in the morning. And so that was my first introduction to Catholics and that. And since then, I've just been interacting with some Catholics online, trying to explore the best of Catholic arguments, and have gotten a lot better appreciation for Catholicism than I had, which was quite low. I mean, I didn't grow up thinking really much of anything about Catholicism, and then realizing, okay, like there's actually a lot of substance here, and have gotten to meet some great Catholics. And then I've also gotten to meet some Orthodox folks, and besides Boyan, they've been great. No, I'm just kidding.
The other guy.
I'm just kidding. No. Yeah, and I mentioned this in my interview with Boyan, but growing up, I didn't even know Orthodoxy was a thing. I probably would have said, yeah, there's Christians and there's Catholics, and those Catholics, they're those poor, confused Catholics. They don't really understand. I don't feel that way now. But it wasn't until, again, I was on staff at the church at this time, and I was actually tasked to teach a series with those high school students that I was talking about. And they wanted me to talk about just various denominations within Christianity and different religions, and just why we believe what we believe. And I told them, if you want me to do this, then first I want to make sure that I can at least go meet with people from all of these groups that you want me to be talking about, because I don't want to just like straw man them, and I want to have names and faces in mind. And so I did that part of it. I didn't actually end up teaching the series, but the first person I met with was a Greek Orthodox priest. His name was Father Mistakos, and he just took me to school on church history. I did not realize how much I didn't know. I mean, growing up in a Protestant evangelical church, we didn't talk about church history. I mean, for all I knew, it went from, this is a little bit of a overgeneralization, but not too much. You had the Book of Acts and everything was great, and then they pretty much messed everything up, and they got involved with the empire, and it all mixed, and it was bad. Then the Dark Ages, very bad. And then the Reformation, good. And then and that was pretty much my understanding of church history. And sitting down with Father Mistakos, he just really helped me, just piqued my interest in church history, the church fathers. And that actually began shaping some of my studies at Moody, just taking classes on that, doing some like elective study on the church fathers. And yeah, now just kind of investigating the claims of different branches of Christianity and seeing how it all stacks up.
I'm curious. Have you attended have you attended a divine liturgy?
I have not yet, so I plan on it. I'm actually meeting with a Orthodox priest there's actually 2 Orthodox churches just down the street, on the same street that the college is on. And one of them agreed to sit down for an interview and tour of the building there. And so I plan on going. There's actually several Moody students that go every week.
Nice.
So yeah, I plan on doing that soon, but I haven't yet.
I'm also curious to know, because you have attended the most important services of so many denominations, like evangelical worship services, Anglican Eucharistic services, both high church and low church, and you have even attended the most important church services of the Catholic Church, both the traditional Latin Bible study and Novus Ordo Bible study. So, in your personal view and opinion, and hello, I apologize. In your personal view and opinion, and I'm strictly speaking of your input here, not your biased view. Where did you get most from while attending?
That's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, so I mean, obviously I'm biased in some ways, but even more so, I mean, I've spent the first 21 years of my life pretty much all in evangelical churches, mainly in like almost mega church style. So that's just the quantity of those services versus the other ones far outweighs it. And it's what I'm used to. And so it's easy for me to connect to that. I'm used to that style of worship. I'm used to those style of messages. So I can think back to lots of times that those were really impactful for me. But there's beauty in a lot of them. Like going to the Latin High Mass was a really interesting experience because it was just so different than anything I was used to. But I guess I'm still learning on, how to quantify that, because what I would usually say growing up, and the evangelical answer to what was most impactful would be what like changed my thinking the most, or where did I learn the most, and that's the basic category I've grown up with. And so if it's from that, it would definitely be evangelical services.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, there's been lots to commend in several of them.
I have a question. Since I'm not that very well versed in Protestant denominations, simply because there's a lot of them. I've been starting to explore Protestantism very recently, so I'm like the biggest noob ever. When you're mentioning evangelicals, is this where the conversion is a very important element, like how you were called to Christ, and how you is that like a big part of evangelicalism, and is that something that is talked about or addressed during worship or gatherings?
Yeah, so definitely that would be a hallmark of evangelicalism, and it's the terminology here gets a little confusing because you could say Protestantism as the one of the three branches of like Orthodoxy, Catholicism, Protestantism, not to leave out some of like the ancient churches like the Coptic Church that have broken out, but in broad umbrella terms. But then within Protestantism you have specific denominations, and a lot of those are like sub-denominations of each other that have splintered throughout. But evangelicalism, like evangelical technically isn't a denomination. It's a somewhat ambiguous term used to refer to people that generally adhere to certain principles. And so if they're doing like a survey, they'll send out a couple. Like, you believe the Bible is the highest authority. You believe in the necessity of being born again, which would go to like your conversion experience. That would be a hallmark of it. It's pretty much
born again in Christ.
Exactly. Yep. And they'd usually use the language of like. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of close the circle. Is that part is that done through any form of baptism?
Great question. So for most evangelicals, now there would be. I don't think believers' baptism would be a necessary requirement to be considered an evangelical. But for most, they would say that you are like brought to conversion by the Holy Spirit, by like professing faith in Jesus. You have that conversion experience, and then that's followed by baptism. And they would say that baptism is an outward declaration of that inward occurrence that has already happened. That's how most would define it. Now, some would differ on that, but they would put baptism after that experience rather than baptism being that conversion experience.
That's interesting because in I would say majority of these traditional churches they're sort of made equal. I mean, of course, that there's going to be a period of repentance before baptism and so on, but yeah, the baptismal theology between the two is very much different, you know, and it's sort of chicken egg question and so on. But yeah, it is. But also something that I was curious about, because again, you have investigated all these denomination churches, families, what have you. What would you consider some of their strong and weak points? You know, because of course that you are much more invested in evangelicalism because you belong to that faith tradition. But as on both having inside information on evangelicalism and having external view of these other religions, what are some of your opinions? What do some other branches do well? What do they do poor? And what can evangelicals learn from other faith traditions?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a lot
Thank
of
you.
parts of that, and I'm gonna. You're welcome. I'll try to unpack that as best as I can. What I think evangelicals do well is like passion, and a lot of this is born. I mean, evangelicals are really heirs of like the Anabaptists from the Reformation, and then like the Pietist movements and all of that, and so they really focus on this like inward passion for the Lord, and just that it's more than just mere mental assent. And so I think evangelicals do really well on that. And it comes through in their worship services and their styles of preaching and just their commitment to missions as well is, I think, a big thing. Right now, actually, at Moody, we're in the middle of missions conference, a yearly conference that we put on where missions organizations from all over the world come and basically recruit students to serve on every continent. And, I think that's something evangelicals do really well. I think just a real love for scripture is another thing that evangelicals do well, and just scaling organizations. Now, this could be good or bad, depending on how you look at it, but evangelicals are certainly good at big churches and big parachurch organizations and just running them. Like, I mean, I think a lot of ways evangelicalism, at least in the West, is very shaped by just Western ideas of like free market economics and everything, and just scaling things. But I think where evangelicalism really struggles is with it's very ahistorical. It doesn't really have deep roots, and I think that's why we see so many evangelicals converting to Catholicism or Orthodoxy, because they're confronted with church history and they say, people held different beliefs than me for at least the first 1,500 years of the church or so. And they realize, like, some of the things I hold to, like, really dearly, whether that be sola scriptura or sola fide, they're like, I don't see this in the early church. And so I don't think evangelicals do a good job relating to history and tradition and just showing where we've come from and why we're here. It's often much more like, let's just go reach people for Jesus, which is great, but not always giving that intellectual depth. As far as Catholicism goes, I think something well, actually, I'll add one more bad thing for evangelicals, because it'll highlight this.
Add as much as you can.
I'll just I'll really knock it down.
Give us the greasy stuff, you know.
Yeah, I'll give you the nitty gritty inside scoop on all of our dirty laundry. So no, I think the other thing we do really poorly with, and this probably relates to tradition and history, but is just the lack of unity within Protestant churches. Now, sometimes I do think this is overplayed, because I think there's two separate things going on here. Oftentimes people will say, they'll quote, there's over 30,000 or 40,000 Protestant denominations. And I think the thing that struggles to be seen there is that while there is a lot of that visible disunity, which is lamentable and bad and like it's shameful, there's something that's not always understood in that, is that a lot of those are within like the same faith tradition. So there might be 70 Methodist denominations, and for the most part they can all get along on a lot of things. Or even like a Baptist can agree with a, I don't know, like Congregationalist church on a whole lot of things. But because we don't have that unifying figure at the top or just this unifying tradition, it is very easy to splinter. And today we see a ton of non-denominational churches, which is actually what I grew up in. So we didn't have any outward affiliations. And so I think that's a real problem for evangelicalism or Protestantism, to use them somewhat interchangeably there. And I think that's what's driving a lot of converts away from the Protestant church into Orthodox and Catholic churches. And so with that being said, and there's probably more too, but I think something the Catholic Church does really well that's really appealing to evangelicals that have gone through church splits or seen their denomination split time and time again. They're saying, I just want to be a part of a united church that is all together, and I think there's a really strong draw there. And I think they see, the papacy as this thing that, while it's often very uncomfortable for evangelicals at first, I think once they buy into it, it's really nice to say, okay, like we all agree with this, we're all on board. And I think that extends to the teaching office of the Catholic Church. I have one over there on my shelf. It's really nice to be able to point to the Catechism of the Catholic Church and say, this is what the Catholic Church believes. You don't have that for Protestants. You could get a systematic theology from any of your favorite theologians, but they're probably going to disagree with each other. And I think that can be unsettling for people, and it's just nice to know, okay, there's an official answer on this. I can believe that, and we'll be good. At the same time, I think some of those strengths in Catholicism can also be some of its weaknesses, in that it depends on how you look at it, but it could potentially be setting up a bit of a house of cards in making some of these things dogmas of the church. And if they're wrong on this, then that means the Pope wasn't infallible when he declared it. Now, it's a little tough. It's a bit of a chicken and the egg thing, because if you buy into the infallibility of the Pope, then these things should have to be true. So it's a little hard to communicate them back and forth. But anyway, I think that's a difficulty for them. I think the Catholic Church has really lost a lot of its zeal in the past 50, 60 years. Actually, an Orthodox priest does a good job of just talking about this, Father Josiah Trenham, and I'm going to have him on the channel, but he talks about just the decline of the Catholic Church after Vatican II, and how like the decline of monastics in the Catholic Church, the decline of like catechumens, and just really like most measurable categories in decline for the Catholic Church. And I don't see a whole lot of passion there in a lot of places. Now, I want to qualify that with, obviously I'm talking in broad generalities. I've met so many wonderful Catholics on my channel. They all just congregate here. No, I find lots of great Catholics on the internet, but I think, you go parish to parish in the U.S. and you're going to see a lot of older, like dying Catholic churches that are struggling in a lot of ways. And obviously they've had lots of scandals, which have just been really ugly. And even right now, I think the division within the Catholic Church over like the Mass wars is really off-putting to me. Of like Latin Mass, Novus Ordo, you're both terrible, blah 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 blah. Vatican II is for Protestants and it's garbage. And like I think the Catholic Church really needs to sort that out, because it's not a good look for them.
Yeah.
And then Orthodoxy. Disclaimer: I would say as of right now, Orthodoxy is probably the branch I know the least about. I'm working on changing that. In fact, as I was waiting for this call, I was reading the Orthodox Way. And I really enjoy it. And I'm trying to interviewing some other people, and just trying to learn more so that I can educate myself on this. The things I really enjoy about Orthodoxy. I appreciate the Orthodox appreciation for mystery. I think sometimes in some things the Catholic Church maybe overdefines things. Like I just made a video on John 6 which was uncomfortable for me in some ways, but by the end of it, I was saying, I think the best interpretation of this is that Jesus, this sounds groundbreaking, except for the church has believed it for like ever, but is really present in the Eucharist in some way.
Yeah.
And everyone said, yeah, like we know. But anyway, doing that, when I look at the Orthodox stance on that of like, yes, this is what's happening, versus the Catholic stance of really using like Aristotelian terms and
Yeah.
the substance and the accidents. Not that it's necessarily bad, but just making that dogma seems, I don't know. It seems like perhaps taking a step too far. So I appreciate the Orthodox way of doing theology. In some ways it confuses me, because at the same time, I think it has the same struggle of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know where to point and say this is what the Orthodox Church believes on this. It seems a little
Yeah.
more broad, which is difficult. One thing I think the Orthodox Church probably wins at is beauty, as far as the iconography and the inside of churches. I mean, there's some beautiful Catholic churches too. Protestants, we just lose at that abysmally. But I think there's an appreciation for art there. And I think Catholic and Orthodox do this well. I think the monastic tradition in Orthodoxy is probably a little stronger. But the emphasis on spiritual growth, because evangelicals have such an emphasis on conversion, a lot of times we're a little short-sighted. And, okay, how do we get people to believe in Jesus? That's a great goal. But we don't just want to leave people there. But I think far too often it's not happening. And we've kind of designed churches around that of how do we get outsiders in and get them to enjoy church. And so we call it like seeker-sensitive churches. We got great bands, like nice coffee. We'll make you lattes on your way in. Like it's going to be comfy. You're going to love it. But we don't always provide great ways for people to really go deeper and to grow in sanctification. And I think the Orthodox Church does a really good job with that. I don't know how good of a job they do at bringing outsiders in, and we talked about this a little. And I was just reading a comment from someone the other day who was saying, he was looking into the Eucharist, and he was like, I knew I could never be Catholic. So I was looking at what the Orthodox teach, and then he's like, and then 2 years later, I finished RCIA and was baptized into the Catholic Church. I was like, well, what happened? And he was like, well, I felt like I was the wrong ethnicity to be Orthodox. And what was the other thing? Oh, and the division within the Orthodox Church. And so it was like, for me, I mean, I don't, whether it became Catholic or Orthodox, I don't have like a huge stake in that. But it was just sad to hear what was off-putting for him about Orthodoxy. And so
I think it's quite a challenge. And Orthodoxy in the United States is significantly different than Orthodoxy in, like the old countries. Because you don't really think about, which church you're attending. It's all the same church. And is it Russian? Is it Greek? Is it Antiochian? Is it what's the name? OCA? Which is the Orthodox Church of America. Whereas you actually encounter this issue where it becomes, you see that a lot of people who are of said nationality actually gather in the church, sometimes not even for the sake of worshiping God, but for the sake of, hanging out. And that could be very, very off-putting. I kind of like your objectivity there, if I may refer to it as that, because at the end of the day, who's really objective? What I like about what you were just talking about is the I guess open-mindedness of how you obviously approached all these different flavors of belief and Christianity. And I honestly truly think it's one of the key things about people whom we refer to as God-seeking people. So I'm pretty happy for you. I'm not saying you're going to end up being an Orthodox Christian. And I'm pretty sure the church is not going to do a thing to facilitate that. But maybe God will. I don't know.
Church won't.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you saying that.
But what I can tell you as a completely lay person, like zero theology training, or very difficult for me to read theology. Like from this, I'm kind of living this thing perspective. I think you're spot on at noticing things. Especially for example, if you're comparing, well, you refer to it as the beauty of the churches and temples and monasteries and stuff. And you briefly mentioned, like, well, the downfall, decline, or whatever, the changes in the Catholic Church. It seems to me, as I was visiting, for example, Catholic churches, it seems to me there's this coldness about them. There's this coldness. It's kind of cold. Whereas when you enter like an Orthodox church, it's like vibrant. It's alive. I'm gonna go ahead and say much more inviting from my perspective. Obviously, that's what I grew up with. I wasn't a Christian while I was growing up, so a little disclaimer there. But still, you can't grow up in Serbia and not be aware of how a church looks like. It's absolutely impossible.
Mm-hmm.
But then, somebody told me something very interesting that gave me perspective, especially when comparing Orthodoxy and Catholicism. And it's like, somebody was like, look into this a bit more carefully. You will see that the biggest motive in a Catholic church is the crucifixion, whereas the biggest motive in an Orthodox church is the resurrection.
Interesting.
And that's and somebody even like might be even something that I've read from an Orthodox source, might be referring to like Catholic theology of the resurrection, and Orthodox theology as the theology. Catholic as theology of crucifixion, whereas Orthodoxy would be theology of resurrection. And when I started thinking about it a bit more, it started making a lot of sense. And then I started reading about Protestantism, and nothing makes sense anymore. Forever will never ever make sense until hopefully God makes sense out of all of that.
Yeah. Well, if there's any questions I can answer for you on Protestantism, I'm happy to try. But
The thing is, I'm still so
world.
confused, my friend. I'm still so confused. I'm still having a lot of trouble, like, separating different points of view. Right? It seems to me that any source I've taken to read, because I'm reading, like, let's call it a guidebook through Protestantism, for a lack of a better word. And then you get to a name, right? A famous Protestant, famous for any given reason, founded the church, wrote this almost creed, wrote these rules, whatever. And then you go and research, and everybody's saying completely different things. Like I find more differences as I'm exploring this vast ocean of Protestantism. I'm finding more and more differences and less things that bind them, except in majority of cases sola scriptura. Pretty much. Yeah. So if I come to a question like I had for evangelicals, your I guess your denomination, if I can refer to it as that, I don't even know. I'll just go ahead and ask, because I'm not ashamed of not knowing things, especially about Protestantism. But I'm learning. I'm picking things up, and it's making me understand things, and some people in a completely different and superior way in comparison to how it was before. I have a great friend that. Who well, he would refer to himself as a denominational Christian, and now it's kind of my mission to dig out how to tag him or flag him, or to better understand what he's all about.
Yeah, I think that can definitely be difficult, especially with non-denominational churches, because they don't have necessarily this visible lineage from certain reformers, though there's an implicit one, and if you dug into it, it's there, but they're not claiming that outright. Yeah, so that's definitely a difficult thing to trace where people are coming from. I think maybe one of the most helpful things is starting at the very root of it all, at the Protestant Reformation. And so, I mean, at first you start with Luther and it's like 1517 when he nails his 95 Theses against the Catholic Church. And from Luther, you have, all the Lutheran movements, and then, major branches like Lutheranism, and then the Reformed churches, which come from Calvin, John Calvin, the Reformer, and his heirs like Theodore Beza and other guys. And that splinters into different things as well. So you have like Dutch Calvinists and Presbyterians, but they all see Calvin as the kind of fountainhead of that. And then the third major group that you have in the Reformation is the Anabaptists. And especially in America, they've had a disproportionate influence. And that's just like a historical thing because of how immigration worked and all of that. But when you read Calvin or Luther, they see themselves as kind of playing this like tightrope game between what, like Calvin, for instance, he would call them the papists on one side and the radicals on the other. And he's referring to the Catholics and the Anabaptists. And so the Anabaptists were like, they went way out. They were like the free church people. Luther and Calvin are called magisterial reformers. So they want still like a high church. They want a structure of it, but they don't agree with Rome and they want to reform it. And ultimately they break away from it. But the Anabaptists, on the other hand, say they're like the extreme sola scriptura, where it's not just the Bible is the ultimate authority, but that's all we need. Like, we don't need creeds. We don't need to read anything else. We don't care what anyone else has ever said. It's just me, the Bible, and the Holy Spirit, and that's all I need. It's Anabaptist. It comes from, the word it means rebaptizers. So they started rebaptizing people. They were baptized as infants, but they said, no, like, it doesn't matter until you have your own faith for yourself, until you've experienced conversion. And so lots of non-denominational churches, lots of Pentecostal movements are really rooted in the Anabaptists, because they had, some of them went even to the extreme of, we don't need the Bible because we have the Holy Spirit. And so Calvin and Luther want to distance themselves from them, both theologically and politically, because they were seen as really divisive. They were generally pacifist.
True radicals.
Yeah, exactly. So Luther and Calvin are trying to stay in between. And then the differences between Luther and Calvin are more subtle, but they have to do with differences over the Eucharist. They could never agree on that, which is why the Reformed and Lutheran traditions never really came together there. And then, their heirs went in different directions. But I think those
Fortunately, the Catholics and the Orthodox agree so much on the Eucharist. Very, very much. 100%. Easy peasy lemon squeezy.
Well, we agree much more than Luther and Calvin did, I think.
Although
I wouldn't know.
Luther would probably not be very far off. So Luther, he taught he didn't necessarily, it's debated whether he would agree with this term, but he taught the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist. And Lutherans have come to be known as consubstantiation versus transubstantiation. So in the Catholic Church, it's, this is, in the Eucharist becomes the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Christ. In substance, it is Jesus, but the accidents are still bread and wine. Whereas Luther would say the bread and wine remain, but Jesus is present in, with, and under the bread and wine, and didn't seek to define it much more than that. So he did opt for the real presence. In fact, a really fun Luther quote, if you ever want to mess with Protestants, is he once said that he would rather drink wine with the Pope than drink mere blood. I'm sorry. He would rather drink blood with the Pope than wine with Zwingli, who didn't believe. He was kind of the first person to not believe in the real presence in the Protestant movement.
Yeah, but it's really interesting because what he said, that as Orthodox and Catholics, I do believe that we are much closer because both of us do believe absolutely in the presence of Christ. But I believe that Catholics do try to define it, and as an Orthodox myself, I don't mind transubstantiation that much of a problem, because it is something that you actually experience. It is just a description of your experience. okay, I absolutely believe this is body and blood, but it tastes, looks, and acts like wine and bread. It tastes like wine and bread. It moves, it stays, and if you're not careful, it can get moldy just like wine and bread. So I don't have that much issue with the transubstantiation itself. However, some of the Roman Catholic practices are, something I disagree with. Primarily, the denial of laity, the chalice, them not accepting the blood, which, thank God, was changed up to the point that I even often get Catholics on my channel telling me something like, I've never seen chalice denied to the laity, and thank God for that, because for me, I know that Catholics have had a lot of issues after Vatican II, and there were a bunch of like liturgical abuses. But for me personally, denying the laity the chalice is the absolute liturgical abuse. Like, I know how Orthodox of old reacted when they found out that Catholics aren't using leavened bread. I'm dying to know how they would have reacted if they saw them denying the chalice. Like, why? Why would you do that ever? I'm really curious to know about it. So
we should have split 5 centuries ago.
Yeah, it would be interesting to read those polemics.
Yeah, like I could only imagine, especially because when you go deep into the reasons for what B and I refer to as the Great Shazam, and normal people refer to as the Great Schism. You see that there's things that you might not think that two huge parts of this church would just separate. Did you just send the heart, B?
Yes, I'm always sending cards.
How does one do this?
You're not the Skype master, Em.
No, I'm not. I'm not the Skype master.
You see, he has attention deficiency. Like, you send a heart, and his whole train of thought falls off the bridge.
Is that from leavened bread?
No. Okay. I sent the normal heart. You sent the sacred heart, and Austin sent the Luther's heart in the white rose. 3 hearts united.
Fair enough. Also, one more question that I just thought of. You mentioned big churches, mega churches, and the Western philosophy of scaling and growth. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, how does this work? How does this work? Can you just enlighten me? Like, what's the point? Who does it? Why? How? You don't have to reveal the secret to me. I mean, I'm fine. I'm not gonna make my own mega church, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, the first thing you do is you set up a really nice pyramid scheme. No, just kidding.
Oh, okay.
I was like
taking notes here.
Let me start recording again. So how do I grow a mega church for myself? People, Jesus.
Yeah, you tell everyone you need a jet plane in order to do the no. Okay, to seriously answer your question, because there's a spectrum within mega churches, and not everyone's like the televangelist who's getting people to give him money for a jet plane. So the way it works, I mean, it's going to vary from church to church, but really it's just, it started, I guess, like late 80s with a guy named Bill Hybels, who really started the movement, and he's since fallen from grace, if you will. Had like a sex scandal and really sad stuff.
I read about that.
Yeah. But what he really pioneered was this way of doing church with really an eye on what we would call unchurched people that don't go to church. And so he saw, how can I take the best of business principles and apply them to a church? So you looked at the church and it's like, okay, this is the audience we're trying to reach. And churches will talk in these terms, like who's our target audience? And so, he was actually out in the Chicago suburbs. And so say we're trying to reach young families. Okay, so if we think of what would it take to get them into church? Well, a lot of people that have left the church think it's boring or irrelevant. And so the idea was, how can we make church more engaging? And, it started with, okay, we're going to give really great messages that are really applicable and just easy to apply to your life and easy to make sense of, whether you've been to church before or you haven't been to church. Then we're going to have great kids programs for a lot of them. So we're going to create these spaces for kids, and parents are going to love having their kids there, and their kids are going to love it so much that they're going to beg their parents to come back. And then we're going to have great music. So even if you don't like what you're doing, you're going to say, man, that was just cool. You're going to feel comfortable. And we're going to tell you, don't dress up, wear jeans, and just feel at home. And we'll make you coffee when you come in, and we'll give you a t-shirt on the way out. So stuff like that is kind of how it started. And then, today you see lots of churches planting that will end up being mega churches. And so, they're not connected with any denomination. And so right now, I'm involved with some people who are planting a church, and the way that looks is people essentially get like-minded people around them that say, hey, we should start a church, and they start fundraising for it. Basically, those people are giving money, and then they can look to church planting organizations that might give you some money to help you start. And then you find a building somewhere that you can rent for a little bit, and then as people give and more people come, you just keep investing and inviting is what a lot of churches would say. And then it just kind of keeps growing. And then what a lot of churches do now is what's called a multi-site model. And this was kind of picked up by people who were saying, like Willow Creek Bill Hybels Church, at the beginning of this movement, they just built huge buildings. I think they have like a 10,000 seat auditorium or something crazy. It might be like 6,000, but it's ginormous. It's like, it looks like a beautiful concert hall. It's huge. But then pastors started saying, is this really the best way to do it? And so they'd build a church with maybe 1,000 seat auditorium or a 500 seat auditorium. And then once they filled that up, then they would build another church, and then they would just send the message on a screen to that church. So it could be one pastor with churches that are playing the video of him preaching. And the biggest one's probably Life Church, and I think they have like over 20 some locations all throughout the U.S. that are just broadcasting it simultaneously. And so that's kind of how that ends up working.
Interesting. So when we're talking worship, for example, is the highlight, is the focus the sermon?
I would say generally speaking, yes. It depends on the church. There's some churches that are much better known for their bands than for their preachers. So for instance, you might have heard of like Hillsong. They make lots of music. They're a church that, they started as just a church band. I've actually been to their church in Australia, and their pastor's famous too, and he writes books, but far more people know the band than know the pastor. So I'd say in general, they would say that, the service focuses around the message, but in practice, some churches end up being better known for their music.
That's interesting.
That it is very interesting. You wanted to say something, B?
No, I wanted to ask a couple of questions as regards to like YouTube career, in the sense of because now what you have said, you have a pastor who's broadcasting his sermons to different churches. And that is practically what we are doing in a maybe slightly different format when we are YouTubing. So I'm curious regarding your input as regards to what are some temptations that us Christians who are doing this social media thingy can be exposed to in the course of our SoundCloudsmanship and so on. Hello?
Hey, sorry, I lost you for a second there.
Yeah, you're cutting out. Oh, you're still cutting out. You're frozen now. You're Olaf from Frozen 2.
Okay, I got back. Stronger than ever. Where did I cut off?
I think it was when you were asking just about you said that, it's similar what we're doing with YouTube, and then I kind of lost you after that.
Okay, so what we're doing is sort of similar to what the pastors are doing when they broadcast their sermons across different churches, even though the format is slightly different. So I wanted to ask you, what are some temptations that us Christians can encounter when we are engaging in YouTubery, TikTokmanship, SoundCloudsmanship, and so on. Whether from your personal experience or people around you or that you have seen online, do you have any input on that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, this could be a whole podcast in itself. There's so many temptations, but I think at the end of the day, so much of it comes down to just idolatry and pride. That on one hand, we idolize our ministry and our following and our audience or whatever, and that's the thing that has preeminence in our life. I mean, that sits on the throne of our hearts, if you will. That is the thing that we give most attention to. It's the object of our desire, and well, when you begin describing something that way, effectively, that's the thing that you're worshiping, the thing that you care most deeply about. And so I think that's definitely a part of it. And that's a really hard thing to guard against. And I think pride as well. And I think those two things fuel each other. I think we idolize it because of the feeling of pride that it gives you. It's nice to know there's that affirmation of, oh, like people think what I'm doing is good, or they said I'm smart, between all the comments where they said, you're terrible or whatever. But I think there's a real danger of trying to place our value in how people perceive us online. And I think that's a constant thing to guard against. And something, on my best days that I try to always pray before I make a video, and I don't always live this out, I wish I did, but is like, God, would this be about you and not about me? Because if this is just about me, like, what am I doing here? What's the point of all of this? But it's a real danger. I mean, there's that temptation, and I've had to try to set boundaries with myself, and then I break them, and then I try to set them again. Of, okay, like, you can't just keep refreshing YouTube Studio to see, like, did someone subscribe to me? Did they comment? Like,
I never did that. I'm not. Why are you accusing me? I never did it. How do you know I did it? I never did. Oh, somebody did. This is precisely why I'm asking.
I've been there, and I'm doing my best to figure it out myself. But I think it's just this constant heart check of, am I trying to derive my value from this? And I mean, social media, it's not to like impugn really bad motives on these people, but like, there's behavioral psychologists working at YouTube and at Facebook and at Instagram who design these things to be addictive, so that when you see that little red icon with the number there, you're like, ooh, I get this little dopamine rush of, like, I feel validated, I feel good. And then, like, a mouse in an experiment that keeps coming back to, like, this one thing that once gave him cheese or whatever, you just keep coming back, like, can you give me validation here? Can you tell me I'm special?
And they have really so much data to learn from. Dear God, they know us better than we know ourselves.
Yeah.
Here's the problem. As the number of interactions people have with technology online grows, these algorithms create information. Literally know us better than we know ourselves in terms of our aspirations and desires and stuff like that. I'm obviously not a YouTuber, especially not a superstar like you guys, but what I can see is the most successful ones here have very broad audiences, and usually they're a step away from a reality show. This is how I perceive this, right? Yeah. So if you're doing this for other reasons you actually get a fighting chance against these kind of temptations. Because I think other forms of YouTube content and creators behind, I think their temptations are much worse than you can imagine. I mean, if you think it's hard because you're a Christian and the devil's gonna attack, and just imagine how it is for somebody who has such a broad audience, so many different. I mean, I can only imagine, right?
Yeah.
So I hope you can feel a little bit of comfort there. And also, what's also pretty cool about normal, open-minded Christian people online is you really get to meet awesome people, and you really get to really enjoy it. Like if you would ask me what I hate about Christian part of the internet, I hate debates. I almost can't stand them because they lose the purpose. You will learn much more and connect and understand much more simply through having a conversation rather than through having a debate, because debates can have different backgrounds. So yeah, sorry about that diatribe. And also I had to Google preeminence. So I appreciate you actually teaching me something new today.
I ain't Googling diatribe. Just kidding. But yeah, I think that there are like 4 levels of temptation of pride that I generally receive, but these are, I think, universal for Christian YouTubers. The first level of temptation is, oh, I love this video. That's the weakest. Like, okay. The second one is, oh, I appreciate your channel so much, and so on. The third is like, oh, I was going through a depressive bout and so on, and your videos helped me through. And the there are like 5. Then the fourth one, the fourth one is like, oh, thanks to your videos, I found out about Orthodoxy or Christianity, or I found God, or whatever. And the final, I was feeling suicidal, but your videos helped me through. And it is really a balancing act of thank God that I'm doing something that's helping people, but also thank God it is I'm doing something that's helping people, like it is nice to get positive input and simply get affirmation that what you're doing is right, but then being on the guard for it not to destroy you, that something that is actually really good can also like absolutely devastate you. And somebody, I don't know, somebody has defined pride as the only vice that grows stronger as other vices weaken. As in, well, it didn't last for 3 days and like, poof, pride, and so on and so forth. So it is a real, really a topic, something that interests me. And for example, I know about Matt Fred, and I think people have suggested you inviting him over for an interview. And I remember his comments as regards, for example, us YouTubers earning money over what we're doing. As in, are we a sham? Is this problematic? I mean, and so on and so forth. And there are so many like ways and passages and what ifs and the doubts and is this useful? Am I? And especially because, of course, that all of us are going to present our best face, when we go on the camera, and that none of us are really that person that we are online, but we are never that person that people actually meet, because we are, of course, all of us are going to hide our bad sides, bad days, except M. M is totally what you see is what you get. I don't think I ever saw somebody who was that much like, that's him, that's absolutely him, even on his worst day, that's him, so kudos to you, M.
Yeah.
Pride.
I also wanted to ask you, is that really your best face?
I'm trying to practice my best face, okay?
Can I ask a question? Since I'm surrounded by this YouTube superstardom, but can you?
Surrounded by idiots.
Yeah, I can't. I obviously can't compare because it's very much different. I'm guessing you have tens of thousands of subscribers, Austin.
Yeah, definitely not. But I appreciate that.
Millions of subscribers. Yeah. So,
He
let's say
he will. He's like, whoop.
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You're obviously very charismatic. I just generally like you, and I'm pretty sure that these things propel people through when they're making content. So I really have no doubts about you. So not to compare, like I have this like piece of software, somewhere around 20 to 22,000 users. I love when they leave a good comment, like this has helped my day, this has helped my work, this is really what I was looking for. So I'm listening to you guys talk, and obviously I can't like I can't really compare the kind of comments that B, for example, just mentioned with what I get. Nobody will tell me, well, you saved my life by providing me this free piece of software. No, that ain't gonna happen. Or because of you, I now learned about, well, in your case Orthodoxy, in their case maybe something else. No, but still, how do we read through these comments and enjoy them in a good way, enjoy them in a non-sinful way, in a non prideful way, only the devil laughs at the end kind of way, what's the how do you do that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I'll go first so that Boyan can say something more profound after me and I don't have to follow up what he says.
Lol, not with that face, but sure.
No, that's a great question. And I think, I don't think there's something wrong with the idea of like, it's natural that these things are going to make you feel good and that you appreciate them. And, it's rewarding to see that people are enjoying what you're putting work in and you're reaping the fruit of your labor. I think for me, what it comes down to is just that effort to not place your value in this. So just as we don't want to let some negative opinion of someone else define us, we don't want their soaring praise to define us. Something I constantly try to remind myself is, the greatest title I'll ever have and the most definitive thing about me is that I am called a child of God. And I think like if I can base my identity in that truth, then that is really where we want to be. So what does God say about me, and allow that to be the most powerful voice in my head. And then something I try to do just like more practically with comments like these is when someone thanks me like that, or it's forcing myself to use language that reminds myself and them that like it's an honor that God would use this channel in that way, that ultimately this isn't about me. And to take those comments and say, God, thank you for what you're doing in this, and that you allow me to be a part of this, because at the end, like this success, it's not because of any genius of mine. Like without you, God, I am nothing. I'm a beggar living on the bounty of God's grace. And I don't always get that perfectly right, but I think just trying to remind myself of that. And then, I mean, also practically, just being around people that know you really well is helpful. I mean, people on the internet will sing your praises, and I always tell them, like, if you met me, like, you'd realize, like, I am utterly average. And, like, being around your family who can call you out.
Yeah.
Like, people on the internet think you're special, Austin, but, like, I remember you when I changed your diaper. Like, whatever.
Yeah. Or you should do your next video with a T-shirt that just says "simp." Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking about it because, your Trello board saved my life, said no one ever.
Why do you humiliate me? Is this an act of a friend?
Yes.
Yes. That was so humbling. Thank you for humbling me. Wow.
Of
Do you have a
course.
connection with Trello?
I don't have any affiliation with Trello. I just created this plugin for Google Chrome that makes Trello better, and that's it.
Well, I use Trello, so I might
Yeah,
have to.
like no, I keep telling him, like, you should make a channel like Trello Illustrated, you know? Because he's so into Trello, like he's the Trello master, and I think ironically, software does save lives, but it is so impersonal that you're not like, thanks, Mrs. Bridget Waljawski from McAfee Antivirus. I mean, nobody says that. It's, you know, it is the old jab against Christians in general. Like, you thank God for the food, but not for the man who like reaped it in the field. You know, so it is basically that. So
no, you paid money for that food, so you thank God for having the means. Why would you thank God for the guy who butchered the pig? Since
he did it
was
for free.
paid as well. He was paid as well. It's not like you're buying stolen pigs.
You don't know that.
Yeah, you are what you eat at the end of the day. But anyways, you never shared your thoughts. Are you avoiding the topic? Are you avoiding the topic? Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Well, you know,
it's a hard topic, though.
No, but actually, I think it is a rather simple. As it is the simplicity of gospel itself, because you know, I mean, Christ says, "You simply tell others." We are unworthy servants, and we only did what we were commanded to do. And you know, I usually like to put myself on the ground by making ridiculous comparisons, like, I have more subscribers than the Mother of God. And when you put it like that, you realize just how idiotic that sounds, and you're like, yeah, that this won't get me anywhere. You know, that number, those bajillion people that follow me or follow whoever, you know, and realistically, the higher the number, the bigger the pride and the bigger the problem, not the praise. So. And sadly, we are all aware of people who have done amazing things, and then they fall for something that is even very usually not related to their great work, you know. And that, you know, yeah, people, so, you know, occasionally you get, oh, what are you like in person? Average, you know. I just have pencils and Windows Movie Maker. So
yeah, none of you is obviously average, but it doesn't really matter. I think what Austin
because
said,
of the Trello.
yeah. But if you're using Trello, you're definitely not average. What I was gonna say is I like one thing that you said, Austin, which is, the most important thing is how God sees you. It's something to ponder, and something that I'm going to take with me after this conversation. I'm also going to sub to your channel. If I can't stand it, I'll let you know that I desubbed, and send you a comment. But I'm pretty sure I'm going to like it, even though it's Protestant. No, I don't touch the comments. No, I've touched the comments once. Okay. I do comment from time. I like to give good feedback to people. I used to love, bashing people with comments online, but it was ages ago. But now what happened is I put a comment, and then he pinned one of my comments on his video, and then I ended up getting so many notifications and people arguing in a thread which was created by my comment. It was ridiculous. like
I'll pin every comment you put.
Atheists versus Christians, show me the proof kind of conversation. I was like, oh, I will never comment on any of your videos again, and I will just dislike what I dislike and like what I like, and that's it.
Oh, I have a confession to make. Somebody put a ridiculous comment on one of my videos.
Okay, you're back. You were
Okay.
cutting out. You were cutting out.
Okay. Somebody put a very ridiculous comment on one of my videos. I can't remember the comment. I can't remember the video. Does not matter. But it is one of those times when I really feel the inescapable urge to feel petty. So I simply clicked pinned comment, which is like, devour him, my pretties, tear him apart. I didn't do anything else. I didn't comment. I just pinned it and then like leaned back into the shadow.
It was mean. It was mean.
It was absolutely mean. And I, God, please forgive me, but I can't resist.
Said every sinner ever.
Of course. Oh man. Austin, thank you so much for joining us. As the movie name goes, the engagement lasted for long enough. Or whatever the English version actually is. I just realized that they simply translated the Serbian title. Do you have any special closing remarks?
No, just thank you guys so much. This was so much fun, and love
Yeah.
what you guys are doing, and thanks for having me.
Thank you so
It was
much.
a total pleasure for us as well. Well, at least for
Yeah.
me. You can't tell with B's face.
Who knows?
The
He
absolute
admitted.
poker face.
He admitted he's a different person. He just admitted it. He admitted it.
Well, as you know from Among Us, I'm a very bad liar. So, well, no,
Yeah.
actually, I'm a very I'm a very good liar and I dedicate myself to it. But we usually play Among Us very late and I'm like sleepy and I can't be bothered with lying right now. So, anyway, Austin, thank you so much for coming. We might have you here sometime as well again. This was really lovely. I have fulfilled my part of the bargain. Please delete those pics. So, and
Hey, can I ask you a question? Can
Yeah.
we call upon you? Like, can we summon you when we need like a Protestant consultant on something?
Yeah, sure. Feel free to reach out.
If
That's
we
gonna
only
happen.
had a Protestant theology major, I can't think of anyone.
Be one of those situations when you and I discuss about something and we offer our Orthodox perspective, and it's like this would be a good time to hear how, for example, an evangelist would feel about this. Wink, wink,
Yeah.
nudge, nudge.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Well, being a YouTuber and a Serb, I know everything about everything twice. So, so, so anyway, Austin, thank you so much, guys. Please subscribe. 5 of you watching this channel, please subscribe to Gospel Simplicity.
I will.
I already did, and I'm following it. It's lovely. And by the way, I wanted to say your production quality is extremely high, unlike ours. So, guys, subscribe it. Austin, if you have any other links, we'll be happy to provide them in the video description down below. Or if YouTube layout changes up above or on the other side, doesn't matter. So, thank you for coming, and hope to see you in one of our next episodes.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Austin. Bye, man.